Okay, this is my Parrot AR.Drone 2. I've had a recent crash to the ground from quite a height, and I believe I've got a broken cross brace. So both sides, the left and the right, still seem to be attached, but the whole AR drone itself is dropping to the ground. It doesn't take its own weight even, so it quickly falls that 1.5 centimeters off the ground, which is not meant to. So it looks like what I've got is my cross brace is broken on the right hand side and again on the left hand side, so I seem to think I've got a break right down the middle, and opening this unit up and replacing it I think is my only option. If I'm lucky I might be able to fix this with some Erred, but I've got to see the damage first, and I'm going to go through the various steps and hopefully this can help you with your own repairs. Okay, first thing to do is to flip it on its back. I've removed the battery and I've freed the cables just to make this a little bit easier. And what I've got to do is to get this plastic cover off. So you've got to be careful of the camera and the sonic rangefinders, etc. I've already peeled off one of the covers just to have a quick little look in case there are any screws, etc. And I found that wasn't, and all I found inside there was a little pin connector, which I guess Parrot AR.Drone use for when they have these things back in their repair shop for warranty checks, etc. So there's nothing particularly useful under there. And of course you've got the little the height ranging camera sensors with the holes. You've got to be very careful removing this. You might want to use either a craft knife, your fingers, or perhaps something a little bit blunter like a good pair of scissors. But basically you've got to tease this plastic plate, and it is stuck to this foam, the foam case that is your AR drone. You've got to tease and pull this off. So I'm going to just do that carefully. Now if you do buy the Parrot AR.Drone cross brace kit, you get another one of these. So if you're in the situation like I am and you're pretty sure you've got a break, you don't need to necessarily save this. So if you think you're finding it easier to get it off by cutting or destroying this, don't worry. What you do not want to do is of course damage any of the foam case of your AR drone itself, because that's another expense that you can avoid. So I'm going to just pop that back there. So straight away you can now see the circuit board. So already it's evident that I'm not going to get to do the repair by just taking the bottom off here. I'm going to have to remove the motherboard, and to do that you've got to be also quite careful, because you need to remove various cables and connectors to allow you to gain access. So you've got to be careful of all these units, etc. And all these connections here actually come off the main motherboard, and you need to do this quite carefully. Nails are as good as anything, so grow yours for a little bit, you'll find it really helps. So this one lifts off, where this one needs to pull out this direction here. And I'm going to just, again, I'm gifted with useful, helpful nails. And certainly if you've got a guitar playing friend, he could well be your best friend. Now that didn't come off very well. Possibly I've broken the connector pin from that ribbon cable. Possibly it was just a plug to hold that ribbon cable in. So I can see the connections here are all okay. So I can see I've now got this loose, and I can see I've now got access to the circuit board. Now it's moving when I wobble the camera, sorry, the battery compartment underneath. I can see it's moving, so that's nicely free and obviously clearly connected to the battery compartment. And underneath that is my cross brace, so I've got to remove this to gain access. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in so that the next shot you're going to see inside there. Okay, now I'm zoomed in and I've had a good close look. I can see there's actually two parts to this motherboard, and there's another ribbon connector and connection here that's bridging the two boards that I need to separate. I'm going to again try with my nails first, and I've got it part way off, but I can see I'm going to need a little bit more force and effort to get these to properly part. And again, the plastic has been really awkward, and this time I've managed to break one part of the connector lug. That's not clever. But again, I've got this ribbon cable. There's quite a bit of play, maybe an inch. I can see all the connectors are fine, but now I've got all three cables free. I'm I'm going to proceed to undo the main board. So I'm using the official Parrot AR.Drone tool that came as part of the mounting tools box. It's quite a good tool, to be honest. It doesn't feel bad at all. Now you're going to want to keep all your items in a tin lid or something, which I've got off shot at the moment. You just line all these up. Now there is a little bit of a play underneath the unit because the foam board of the battery connector is clearly somehow mounted through and underneath. So there are 4 main screws with small black washers that I'm removing. These appear to be the main 4 screws that hold the board in place. There are other screws that have actual crossheads, which I'm not touching at this time because I'm hoping I can gain access to the underneath. Let's just see whether I can now lift this out or not. Feels like I'm going to be able to, let's hope. A little bit of snagging on something. Let's see what that's catching on. There's clearly another cable or connector somewhere. Let's have a look. Okay, I can see there's some connectors underneath. I'm going to hinge it backwards. I think that's the way I'm going to gain access. I'll try and twiddle this so you can see. I'm going to actually have to shine a light in there, aren't I? You're not going to see this otherwise. Let me just angle this a little bit better, bring it into shot, and I've got a little torch here to try to illuminate that. So I can see I've pretty much freed the board now, but I can also see there's another bunch of cables going into connectors going onto the board. I can also now see my cross brace, and I can actually see exactly as I thought the way it's broken. So that is a replacement job. Okay, I'm going to zoom the camera out and carry on with this. What I can do is to lift up the board. There does just seem to be enough cable to have the board now mounted upright. Still got to be careful of the connectors around here, and underneath here there's a white series of plugs, and certainly there's actually 2, and certainly at least one of those needs to come off. I can also see the connection where the battery feeds power to the board through there. That doesn't need to come off and is actually cable tied to the board. And what I'm going to do now is to carefully remove these white connectors. Yeah, that was a lot easier than the black ones on top. Okay, so removing these connectors again. So I'm going to remove them both. I can't see a good way of getting the cross brace out without removing the motherboard completely. So the second plug, a little bit awkward. So each of these sockets that I've seen so far on the AR.Drone are different, but they're reasonably easy to clear. The power lead, you now need to fiddle. So I'm going to just turn the unit over quickly. So basically the power and the USB lead that's on a dongle does come out of the rear, so you want to just push this and feed this through. There is actually a big enough hole under this Velcro, it'll make a lot more sense. Give me some room as well. I'll just hold that open. There's just about enough room to get these connectors and cables through, and you can already hear the motherboard has now pretty much dropped out, and there we have all the circuitry. Having a look at the AR.Drone, this metal plate here, I really hope its plan or aim is to be a defensive plate, because mine's got 4 corner touch points, which I'm going to zoom in and show you this. And I know why that's happened. It's because my brake, the way my crossbeam's broken, I've actually got, now I've got proud crosses of plastic that have been digging into my motherboard. So I'm going to zoom in just to show you. Okay, this is just a quick close-up of my AR.Drone motherboard, and I was mentioning that I've got a little bit of damage on this metal plate, and I don't know whether it's metal plate, a heatsink, not 100% sure. I don't plan to take it off. It doesn't look like something that is user maintainable, but you can see I've got 4 little indentations and dimples that have been caused by something pressing into this plate, and I suspect very strongly it's to do with, and I'm going to shine a light again just to help. It's all dark on dark in here. So inside here, my cross brace has broken just as I suspected. So I've now got, as it were, 2 V's. Yeah, so let me hold that cable out the way a little bit. So So it's literally, I've got a right and a left. There we go, that shows it quite well. So it's cleanly broken down the middle in that orientation, and I've got obviously some pointy bits of plastic that have been poking into my motherboard. Okay, I flipped it over and turned it around again, so it's a similar orientation to how it was at the beginning. The only other thing now holding in the remains of this cross brace and all the wiring loom are these sticky square tabs that are on each corner. They're pretty well stuck on, and again you might want to use your craft knife, a pair of scissors, etc. to peel off. Again, like the very bottom sticky plate, you can cut these off if you find them that awkward, but at the end of the day you want to just get them loose so you can slide them down the shaft so that this is loose, because the foam case of your AR.Drone, and I'm going to slide something down there just so you can see what I'm talking about. A piece of paper would be useful. Let me just show you this. So the AR.Drone actually has a cut in the foam that allows these to slot in and out. Okay, all 4 sticky pads are now off, and I'm now ready to ease the crossbar out of the AR.Drone base. And there we have. I'm going to actually take the AR.Drone base away so you can see the remnants of my damage. So absolutely, literally folded in half. As I currently have my AR.Drone in pieces, I thought it might be interesting just to have a quick little close-up of the body itself. Obviously there's a little bit of damage here as I pulled off the squares that had the shafts on. The only part that's still attached to the actual polystyrene type case is the foam battery rest. So this is the cushioning where the battery would normally sit, and underneath you can see that actually the battery compartment and these poles are actually what the as you can see I'm pushing from underneath, actually what the motherboard's mounted onto. The design's quite a bit different inside to the AR.Drone 1, in that the AR.Drone 2 has a very separate compartment area here for the sound, sonic depth perception, stereoscopic sound I guess is coming out of here in effect. And there's another little dinky circuit board in there that's still remaining in the unit, so I haven't had to take that out. And the rear camera here, the base camera here, the connection is staying, it's remaining in the device. It's just stuck to the actual foam case itself. So that's just a little extra detail for anybody that's always wanted to know what's inside their Parrot AR.Drone 2. Okay, here's the replacement part, my crossbeam. Inside the Capture Strictly silver bag is the said crossbeam, and I can see that's nice and solid. Attached to the arms, these square sticky pads, which will actually affix the unit to the body. I can see I've got all the wiring loom, etc., so there's no issue with regards to having to strip anything else out of the old unit. Of course, there's no motors on here, although I have got the bearings, etc., so I'm getting in effect another set of bearings, but I've got to take all the pins, the cogs, the motors, etc., and connect all this up to make this fly again, but I'll do that at the end. The first thing you do is to get this into the body. Going back to the bag just quickly, also inside the bag are 2 other things that have actually been stuck. I'm just going to rip these out. I guess that's so these don't move around whilst being shipped. Just get rid of the bag now. Excuse me. So you've got a new base plate. See, that's sticky on. I guess that white peels off later, so that's one of the last things I'll be doing. And you've got another little black sticky point here, which is just going to cover up this little empty rectangle which is just above the motherboard's plug-in point. Okay, so this is the crossbeam. There very much is a front and a back, so you really do need to find this arrow pointer on the crossbeam and the wiring loom to the back. And when you turn everything over, because obviously I'm going to have to do this upside down and reverse, I'm going to bring the case back in, the body shell as it is now. There's nothing really much to it at all. And I'm going to make sure I've got the arrow pointing forwards. I'm going to slide down. This is where, if you've got sensitive teeth, you're going to turn the volume down. Okay, so that slotted and popped in place, and it's only being held in place at the moment by the foam. These stickers I'll peel and attach, but I'm not going to do that until I've actually got the motherboard back in, because I want to make sure that I've got no issues with getting the cables and connectors in the positions I want. I can already see what I've done here is, for exactly this reason, I've already not got the front camera cable accessible to me at the front. So there's another good reason why you don't want to stick these on too early. So this is exactly what I want. I want the wiring loom available to the rear. I need the front camera. I also need the connector to the height sensor board available. So these are will be holding forward, this to the rear, and I can now go ahead and put the motherboard back in place. Okay, so process in reverse. I've got to slide the USB connector and the actual connector to the battery, the power connector, through the bottom of the unit, back through to the top. It's all upside down. I'm going to get my tops and bottoms mixed up, I know I am, but I can see I've already achieved that. Make sure there's enough clearance, and let's tuck this out the way and get the unit facing the side I need. So I've now got it in the right position. I've got to again make sure I've got access to all the cables and connectors before I reattach the sockets underneath. Let me just spin that around a little bit better. So I've got a black power connector and then the data connector for the controls to go in. They can't go in the wrong way around, which is reassuring. So there's no fear of getting the connectors in the wrong way. You've got to jostle a little bit to get yourself enough access and room, but that clicked in quite snugly there. I heard a little click as I pushed that in. The white connector doesn't look quite so clever, but I think again there's actually a ridge. There is. Okay, so again, can't get that wrong. Let me just twist that to the correct orientation. Now you're going to lose quite a bit of sight here because there isn't that much length on the wires to actually do this. And it's proven to be a little bit tricky to get this in place. I'm handling this as gently as I can to get this job done, but I do feel quite conscious that I'm also what I'd call rough handling. Okay, I'm going to again shine a light in there just so you can see that I've actually got, I hope that light's okay, that I've actually got the two connectors in place. All the other connectors go on once this board is back screwed in place. So what I'm now going to do is to zoom out, and I'm going to just get all these things in position, tidying the wires up. Okay, after quite a bit of fiddling about to get the cables underneath the motherboard that I've got here in place so I can actually slot it on, what I found is I needed to make sure I had the cables, especially the main battery cable, the main fat red and black wire, the right way around a particular post at the back. Now the last fiddly job is I've got to get this brown golden connector up the middle between these two circuit boards, so I've actually got to find a little post box like slot, and this is almost where you could do with a friend to just grab this. It's very much like threading cables up through desks when you're trying to work on the ground and you're feeding cables up. It never quite works. It's so much easier for dropping down, but I think I've now got it. I think so, and there we go. So hopefully I don't lose that, and that I've still maintained the position enough to get the motherboard back on its posts without snagging, and I can see that I have, he says. A little bit of play there, so I'm now going to hold that in place and get the screws in place. Okay, I've already popped two screws in because I was finding it quite tricky holding the motherboard in place, and I was having problems keeping the cables underneath where I wanted them, and I think that's partly because the looms are quite firm. I have checked that I'm not squashing or pinching any wires underneath, and I think that's the important thing, and it just needed a little bit of encouragement, let's say, to keep the wires in place. I think it's just because the cables are all new and they're a little bit bouncy, and the wires where the plug-in connectors are on the bottom of the motherboard, bottom in the orientation that I'm working on the board now. I really mean the top. Just needed a little bit of encouragement to stay put. So I'm tightening up the screws reasonably tight, and we have here now the motherboard in place, back in place on the drone, mounted on the battery box. I've got all these connectors to reconnect. I think the easiest one's going to be this rear one, because it's actually a proper little plug-in. It says the easiest, but it looks like it's pretty fiddly to get it aligned up, so it's very, very flat with the motherboard. That feels about right. Yep, so that actually slotted back in place quite nicely. This ribbon and this ribbon, the problem I had when removing them, it resulted in both of the connections breaking a little bit. So I found the one that dropped out, but it's got a little plastic plug missing, the same as this black one. It's got one of the little plastic plugs missing. I'll have to see whether these are available from Parrot. I don't think I particularly applied undue force, and I don't know whether these are particularly brittle or I was unlucky, but it happened twice. Okay, what I've actually had to do is to slide the rather broken connector back onto the ribbon cable so that it's going to hold firmly in place when it slides back in. Now this is going to be a real difficult job. I think I'm going to need tweezers and a bit of patience to do this, so you might not actually get to see a great deal on camera, but here goes. Let's see whether I get this first time or not. Oh, it's not gone too bad. To be honest, I'm not going to know whether that's a proper contact until I turn the unit back on again, but I've certainly now got a snug fitting black connector. I think that ribbon looks the same as it was when I took it out. I think that is the case with all these things. You really got to keep notes and remember what you're doing. Don't get distracted, do it all in one go so your memory's fresh, and I think that is about the same. I've got the same issue with the remaining blue ribbon connector, which is from this circuit board area here. So again, I've got a very small piece of plastic I've kept, and this one, a little bit different to the larger one I've just done, hasn't got a slot for the wire. This really does look like just a piece of plastic to keep in place the connector. Let me give that a go now. Okay, with this remaining blue connector, I'm finding I'm just lining it up. I'm now going to try and slide it down into place, just using my fingers. Doesn't seem to want to go in very far. It feels like it's resting in there at the moment. And the blue connector on the very end of the cable, let's just have a look at the length of that. So it's about 1 centimetre deep. I can see on the rear the various, just about see that, copper shiny connectors, and I'm going to just try that once more. Now possibly that's as far in as it needs to go, but it doesn't feel like it's going in very far. Yeah, it really does feel like it's only a few millimetres in there. Okay, so I'm now going to try the plastic cover, what's remaining of it. Now if I drop this, I'll have to really do this again, so wish me luck. This is the first time. Now that feels okay. I did get a reassuring click from the one plastic lug that was still surviving. I just don't know whether in use, in play, in flight, whether this is all going to stay in place. Okay, I'm now going to stick the crossbeams to the main hull. So each of the arms has a black sticker that has a white 3M cover. Just rip that off. Make sure that the arm is in a good position. Slide the square into place. And make sure you've got a good smooth contact. Now I've not put the bottom on yet, and that's so I can actually put my finger or thumb inside, so I can really squeeze and make sure this is quite firm, at the same time making sure that the foam is together. So this is doing a couple of jobs. It's also ensuring that the case isn't going to open for the pre-cut slot that is required to get the cross beam bars in and out. And I'm really spending a bit of time here making sure I've got a really nice neat contact to that, and that's a good job. Now again, there's actually another protective plastic outer on the outside. Be careful when you're peeling this. You don't need to peel it, by the way. I think I'm just doing this to show you. In fact, I'm not going to do that just now because I've decided to leave it on. But the one I did earlier, he says, had a little plastic square over that, which again I just pulled off and slipped off. Okay, I've done those two now. I've got two more to do, and I'll come back. Okay, just a little bit of thought here. I'm almost regretting having stuck these to my unit, because what I'm going to do now is actually put all the motors and props and propellers in, and then I'm going to want to power it up and test and check it's all okay. And if it isn't, I'm going to have to take all these possibly apart and maybe even send this back to Parrot. So maybe don't stick these to the actual base until you've done the motors, the props, the blades, and seen it work. I haven't done the bottom plate, so I'm glad I've not done that, and therefore protecting and preserving the you know, it's a single-use sticky layer at the end of the day. Saves me having to go and get some glue and worry about what will or won't stick to the foam. So there's just a little comment regarding maybe save sticking these on to the very end when you know it's all successful. Okay, so I've now got to the stage where I'd say I'm about halfway in terms of time. So I've been at this over an hour to get it to this point. I've slotted the power connector and the USB connector back through neatly, and I've put the USB connector back into its Velcro sleeve, just so that's a job that's done. Now I've got to get the old broken cross beam to get all the four motors out and to put props, shafts, and gears and props on, etc. Okay, so I've now got to obviously take all these parts off my broken bridge cross arm. I've got here the tool to remove these top clips. I'm just going to quickly do one. He says quickly, hoping it's not going to shoot across the room. Done this a few times now, and there it is. You've got to be a little bit careful, make sure nothing behind you is going to get damaged, including yourself. Now it's all a little bit less stable now because, of course, there it goes. The unit's wobbly, so you've only got a single foot to work on. So I'm going to probably look to get something to brace the shafts here to do the other two, three even. But that's part of the job done. That's one thing. So I've got myself a shaft, a cog, and my blade. Now I've got plenty of spares, and what I'm going to do is just to do a very good detailed check, and I'm going to consider whether I'm going to rejuvenate all these parts. If there's any sign of warping or damage, I'm going to perhaps retire these for a little bit and put some new ones on in place, and I'll do that bit by bit as I inspect each one. So they've taken these off before, but the job for me, that's the first time, and I can flick this over freely, is I've got to remove the motor. So I've got again a ribbon connector here that connects to this circuit board, and I've got to actually remove this. There are some screws that hold this to the foot, so I can see three very small screws, black on black, and what I'm going to do is to zoom in with this upturned in such a way that you can see what I'm going to do in detail. Okay, one more step I'm just going to quickly show you. So I've removed just one prop and propeller from one of the arms. I'm shining a light on here, hoping it can help illuminate this a little bit better than I can get in the light. It's actually made the picture all very dark, so it's not worked at all, but there is a 2 written on the underside of the cross beam. Maybe the turning the light off is going to help. I pointed it with a pen here, so there's a 2 there. And alongside that, I'm going to now quickly just bring in the propeller that I took off, and on the side right by the center column in here there's an A Now it's going to be quite difficult to see that as well, but when you go looking for it you'll see it. So I'm going to write down against number 2 an A. I'm going to do that for each of the 4 as I take them off to make sure I've got the correct combination when I reassemble this. Okay, so I'm now going to remove one of the motors from the damaged crossbar. First thing I'm going to do is to remove the connector. I'm going to do this with my nails again. My advice really is don't cut your nails for a week. They are the best tools for doing little fiddly jobs like that. And just by using my 2 thumbs, coming at it from the front, I've now removed the connector, which you can just see reflecting in the light there. So that's now separated out. So I'm now going to focus on actually removing the motor and the board from this particular foot. Okay, so there are 3 screws. Again, I'm using the tool. Again, it's a little bit wobbly, so you really need to brace the unit as you're doing this. I'm going to try and come in at an angle so you can still see what I'm doing. But it's 3 screws. That's one. I always recommend a good board that shows up any colours and small screws. I'm going to angle this a bit better because I did find that a little bit wobbly. Hopefully you can see this a little bit better as well. So it's not perhaps the best for me not being able to press on the table, but I'm pretty comfortable using my own hand as a brace. You get a feel for how tight these are screwed in as well, which is important for when you reattach this into your new unit. And that's the 3rd one. Now that's all I can see, so this should now be quite loose and should, he says, come free. I can feel that the circuit board's nice and free now. That's good. So now for the motor. So on the top here you've now got 3 screws around the main cog, which same again I'm going to unscrew. I'm pushing down on the foot this time a bit more. These are a little bit more solidly fixed in. And they're slightly smaller, so the 3 other screw types. I'm going to just bring one into shot here, the 2 types. So on the right here, it's not quite in shot, there we go. So on the right here, this is from the circuit board, and the left here, this is from the motor. So you want to keep these separate piles. And I'm going to just do the last couple. Trying to not block the camera this time. It's all about finding a good angle that works for us both. Keeping the screws separate. Again, I can feel that noise of just other parts of the quadcopter arm that I've got twisted over, falling over. As you can imagine, it's in a bit of a mess in 3 pieces. Okay, so I've now got my 2 piles of 3 screws, the 2 different types. I've got the circuit board released and removed, and I should now be able to remove. Let's turn this over. Should be able to remove this motor now. I'm going to push the gear from the underneath of my small finger. And did that come out any easier? Yeah, I think it did. I think it's always the case, once you've done something twice, you've learned a little knack, and it certainly becomes a lot easier for you to do it a second time. So I've got a good collection of screws here and motors. I'm going to take the others off, and we'll look at then assembling this onto the newly rebuilt AR.Drone. So I've now removed all the motors and the circuit board for the motors from the broken part. My only advice will be at the very end to say that the first job is definitely to do the connector, then it's the screws for the motor, then it's the screws for the circuit board underneath, then push the motor down. So once you've got this really clear, the circuit board and the motor come out together, a little bit of angle twist to get it out in the gap of the feet, and it's pretty straightforward. Okay, Parrot are pretty good at labelling things, and the propellers and the actual cross strut etc. is labelled, but you can't now see the numbering. So what I've done is kept track of what went where, and my really amazing diagram here, this is the AR.Drone facing forwards, is just I've numbered, so I know that this is number 1. Number 1 needs a C blade. This is the actual motor that I took from the my faulty unit's crossbar, and I'm going to be replacing exactly place for place the motor with the blade, or a new blade of the correct type. So this is 1NC, this is arm 2 and needs an A blade, this is arm 3 and needs a C blade, this is 4 and also needs an A blade, and I've paired the motors up. So a little simple diagram for yourself will be very useful. And now I'm going to just install the first motor into here. Okay, so this is the last one. I'm going to just show you what I do on each one now. I actually quickly pop the cable this side of the foot, give the cable a good little tug to make sure I've got all the spare wire slack that's in the arm, and that's useful for when you hook it back to locate the connector into the motor circuit board. And then I go ahead and install the motor circuit board. Now the motor really does need to be lined up with its socket to line up then further down. To do this, you really need to get this circuit board as close to the final position for it as possible, because it actually will actually resist allowing the motor to position where it needs to go. A little bit twisting, you would see the holes line up. You then want to get one of the small flat-ended screws, so they are different types. You can feel the types are different, and you want to just get that going. Once you've got one in, it's a lot easier because you're not holding everything in place at the same time. So you want to just screw all 3 of those in, and then turn your attention to the motherboard, the circuit board, sorry, of the motor, using then the different type of screw. So now of course I'm using a pointed head screw. I'm going to pop one of the rear ones on first, making sure first that my cable for the motor circuit connection is in between the 2 posts. He says, open the screw. Let's just do that again. I might as well show you all of this. There we go. Make sure you've got a good straight alignment. You don't want to be biting into the plastic too much. Your memory of how tight and when you untighten these, when you're removing from the old unit, is one of the best ways to know how tight you need to re-secure. The end motherboard, I keep saying motherboard, the end connection here on the circuit board for the motor is actually quite in line with the foot, so it's a little bit difficult. I'm going to rest the screw there to get a very neat initial alignment. However, if you undo this double-ended tool from Parrot, you're suddenly then able to. So what I'm going to quickly do now is start the threading process, and then finish off by putting this back into the handle so I can get more prise on the actual screw itself. Now I've managed to let go here, so that wasn't very clever. Let's try that again. What I'm probably going to do myself is magnetize this screw driver by resting a bar magnet on it for some weeks before I put it away, so that next time it's a lot easier. So as you can see, I'm actually able to get a really straight alignment here, so I can make sure I'm putting that screw in absolutely in line with the lug, the peg here. But the finishing turns, because I can't quite grip with just my fingers around the metal shaft, I'm going to pop it back in its handle, tighten it all back up again, and although I'm now slightly angled, I'm sure to get enough bite. Let's just try and get that in to tighten this, and there we are. So finish that off, and with regards to the screws, I'm now going to just do the connector. Now this is quite fiddly as well, so you want to look into the socket to make sure you've got the right orientation. Again, it's impossible to put it in the wrong way around, so if you feel resistance, you've probably got it upside down. You really need to force this connector over. You've given yourself enough cable, and I think pulling the cable along the shaft is the best tip I can give you, and then it just slides in. You don't actually get a click on this one like some of the other connectors, but it does feel quite snug. So hopefully you can see that, and that's now in. And I've now done all 4 of the motors, and I've got to just finish off the last few screws on that one, and we're nearly done. Okay, we're at the stage where I'm going to be putting the shafts and the cogs and gears back in before I put the propellers back on. And at this time what you want to do is to just recheck that all your shafts and your cogs aren't damaged. Now is a good time to actually give your quadcopter a good overhaul. I'm going to also add a drop of lubrication oil before I put the shafts in. I'll do that by applying the oil to a tissue paper, which I'll do in a minute, and I'll coat the shafts. So the first thing I do is to check whether I've got any bent shafts. I know I've got one. I felt the resistance when I was pulling the shaft out, and that's usually a clear sign. But what you can also do by rolling them, you can see that this one here doesn't like to roll easily, where the others, these are all quite dirty and a little bit magnetised. I always find they get a little bit magnetised when they've been used for a while. Roll reasonably well. That's actually a little bit bent as well. I'm a little bit surprised about that one. Let's just check these other two. That one really is fine. And that one really is fine. So I'm actually going to discard these two. Yes, if you've got a good workshop and some really good straight metal, you could. Also, you've got to keep the head off when you but you could, with fine tapping, you can straighten these. These are reusable, but I'm putting them in my discard pile. So I've got myself, luckily I had a few here, a couple of brand new shafts, so they're the 4 I'm going to be using. Now is also the time to give your cogs and your gears a really good inspection. What will probably help you do this is a bit of white paper, and at the end of the day feeling and looking very, very closely. Now I've already noticed some damage on this cog. There's a tooth damaged there, nothing drastic, and a little bit of damage on that one, so I'm probably going to replace that one. Let's just quickly again spin this one around. Looks good. Go on the good side, and another one. Looks good, and another one. So I think I've had a couple that have got damaged. Whether it was all to do with this crash or not 100% sure. And that also looks good. So certainly I've had damage to this cog here. It's I can see it also edge on. It's a little bit worn, and I've got some shorter cogs. So somewhere along the damage that caused the break, it looks like one of these really got dented, possibly two. I've had one obviously quite badly bent shaft pin, and another one damaged as well, and it looks like one of the main cogs has also been damaged. So I'm now going to go ahead and, using my line-up pattern in regards to what goes where, prepare and place all the new shafts and cogs and gears and the correct blades, the correct A's and C's, onto the right ends. Okay, and again I'm oiling the shaft pin all around to make sure it's covered in that way. What I'm also doing to add a little bit extra oil, so when I feed this pin through, before I go all the way slightly down, I'm adding another drop of this bearing oil into this reservoir that I've basically made. I'm doing this, trying to get one drop. It just went back up into the bottle. There we go, there's one drop. So a little bit more than I expected. I think I perhaps had got the drop and didn't realise it. But anyway, by lifting and lowering the shaft through this, and by basically feeding it up and down, I know I'm lubricating the shaft pin very well as the bearing itself. Now I've applied a little bit too much on that, so I've done more than one drop there. Apologies. Let me just, again, good use for the tissue. You can use a cloth, etc., but this isn't going to wash out of a cloth very easily. So if you've got a rag at hand, absolutely, but don't go and use a towel or anything from your kitchen. Okay, so I'm satisfied that that is now has been oiled as well as replaced. It feels nice and smooth and straight going up and down through the bearing, so I also can tell by feel that I've got a straight shaft pin, which is all important. I'm popping on one of the new gears, just giving it a quick little spin, check if there's not too much or too little resistance, and I can tell that's good. This is also a C-blade arm. Just going to drop the propeller on top, and again give it a good spin. That's fine. Now I just need a new, I've actually decided to use new blade and new circlip check the side. I find these have got a slightly flatter side, and I like to have that side down to the blade. Getting that into position and then using the tool, make sure I've got the right way up. There's a little recess that you can easily then hold the pin in place. Make sure I've got this all the right height and click that on in place. So that's now on. I'm going to give it a quick little spin with my finger, and I should be able to go around with a decent hard tap, about 1 revolution, not more, not less. So it's not sticking at all, and that's exactly how it should feel from my memory. And I'm going to finish the other 2 off, and we're nearly done. Okay, I'm now at the point where I can do a power on test and just watch that all the LEDs and all the motors do their normal startup test. So here comes a battery. I'm going to just introduce it, and then I'm going to clear my hands. Okay, I can see LEDs on all 4. That's a good sign. And excellent, so doesn't seem to be any issue there. I'm going to now do the final part, which is to stick on the bottom the cover, and we're done. Okay, we're on the very last stage now, where I'm literally just going to attach the bottom protective cover. So I'm going to just double check and think about this before I do it, but it's as straightforward as peeling the backing off this and putting it in place, and hoping I get it right first time, because I gather from the stickiness that I encountered with the black square pads on the shafts, that it's pretty good sticky stuff that they use here. So I've popped the outdoor hull on just to help me give a little bit of support and a bit more grip. Obviously the most important things I ensure are clear are these cameras and all the sensors, etc. So I'm going to just, starting at the very front, because I've got a nice straight line, I can see that's pretty good. I'll try and be careful not to push it all the way down straight away in case I do need to lift it up. Yep, so the rear camera would have been completely blocked by that. So I've got to do a little bit of playing here to make sure that is clear, and I can see now more clearly that that's a better alignment. So I've had to push a little bit further forward to ensure that my rear bottom camera and eyes are clear. So there's this one and this one. I can't align that because the circuit board is underneath, and I'm assuming that positioning on this and these two together are good enough. So because I've got my outdoor hull on, I can press it down a little bit quite firmly. The stickiness was only really on the edges, a little bit on the cross piece here and around between these sensors. So I'm going to just run my fingers around and get sure it's a good firm connection. And the very final job, I'm going to just wipe that area because my fingers might be a little bit oily from the bearing oil I use to make sure that this isn't greasy at all, is I'm going to apply the little black sticker on top of the area that's open and exposing my motherboard. This time when I said it, it really is the motherboard. But first of all, I've noticed there's actually a protective peely cover on this that I am going to take off, because what I don't want to do is have this fall off, causing me to lose my protective cover. Now that's, I've peeled enough off, I'll finish that off in a minute, but the important thing I'm trying to do here is stick this on. The really good thing about that is I don't need to worry about me having sticky fingers on it. It's interesting, it's a silver foiled back sticker. I'll make sure that's nice and central. Doesn't need to be particularly well lined up. All I'm doing is covering it up, making it water and weatherproof. A little bit of splash proof protection is always good, and again make sure that's really well stuck. And I'm done. I have a repaired AR.Drone 2. Okay, so job done. I've replaced a completely broken cross strut, and it literally did snap in two. All in all, this took 2 hours. It probably took me a little bit longer because I was obviously making a movie and stopping and starting and tidying up the set a little bit, which you won't have to do, but you really do want to allow 2 hours to do this job. You're probably going to be quicker if you're familiar with changing the shafts, etc., or repairs and etc. to the end of the motors, because each of those can take a little bit of time. But the main work for me was learning and understanding how to deconstruct safely the AR.Drone and put it back together again. I found the Parrot videos lacking. I found them too fast and very lacking in detail. They've got more details on the AR.Drone 1 than the AR.Drone 2. I'm hoping that although my videos are slow and long, that you can always play this real time, a little bit like a chef would, and you can keep this playing in the background, replay, and hopefully this will help step you through the various tasks and learnings that I've made making this repair, and that you're able to also get flying as quick as you can. You do need a few spares and repairs, and this cross piece cost me £25 in the UK, which is about $30, €30, so it's not been a cheap repair. I also found I had to change a couple of shafts and a couple of cogs which had got worn teeth, again probably down to the rather heavy crash that I had. And I'm hoping to now go fly and test my Parrot AR.Drone 2 in the air, and I'll certainly add comments below, and you'll see other films of me flying, hopefully with a more stable and fully updated Parrot AR.Drone 2.